conversation. A pleasure to welcome to the program Joseph Carranzo. He's an investigative researcher, is what we've got him up for. He's a very interesting independent researcher. Yes, and he's a very interesting fellow. He's got a wide range of things that he's interested in. He's becoming very active here at Manhattan Network, and we're going to find out about that and much more of his very well-led life. And Joseph, welcome very much to Conversation.
Thanks for having me, Harold.
Please share. I know we've crossed fields like ships in the night. We've crossed a lot here at MNN and so forth. But share, if you would. What I like to do is share your own background, born and raised at Little League Education. Then we'll talk about some of the things that are of particular concern to you, because I know you're a very serious and concerned person. Yeah.
Well, I was born and raised within the 5 boroughs here, mostly in Flushing, Queens, and I've been a member of the Electrical Workers Union here in New York since 1982.
Okay, that goes way back, yeah?
Yeah.
You're an electrician?
Yes, amongst other things. I'm an electrician.
Yeah.
And as far as I have a degree in labor studies.
Labor studies?
Labor studies.
That's interesting, okay, yeah.
And, but as far as credentialism from mainstream educational institutions, my resume falls short.
Okay.
But as far as self-education is concerned, I've dived into various fields in recent years, and I've read that the best education, after all is said and done, is self-education.
Thank you very much. I like that concept very much. There's the term autodidact. You've heard that, I guess. Yeah. That's a term that I have great reverence for, because in reality, I think that's the only education that really matters. It's when you're after something yourself that you can really, you know, pursue it, and it sets in, rather than doing what somebody else is telling you you should be doing that you don't want to do. There's too much of that in the name of education, I think.
Right.
That's the way I see things, yeah.
Institutionalized learning pretty much tells people what to think, not necessarily how to think, which is where the field of epistemology comes in. I mean, I think I was about maybe 40 years old before I'd even heard or knew the definition of the word epistemology, which is the study of knowledge and knowing, especially the origins of knowledge. Like, how do we come to know those things that we proclaim to know? So a subfield of that is a field called general semantics.
Yeah,
which
okay,
is
yeah.
an educational discipline that it's more than just, when people hear the term semantics, they think immediately, well, you're into words and the definitions of words. But general semantics is much, much more than that. General semantics is an exploration and an educational discipline dedicated to words and their meanings, yes, but also the thought behind the words and their meanings.
Okay,
and the neurological processes behind these things. And it was essential. I've discovered a study guide. Let's just call it that.
All right.
And the emphasis of this study guide, the focus of this study guide, is so that the user of this study guide develops what the author calls political, jural, and linguistic literacy.
Political, what was the middle?
Jural.
Jural, what is that? What is it?
The study of law.
Jural, I see, okay, okay.
Especially constitutional law principles, legal maxims.
Okay.
If we don't know the law, see, the framers of the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, held to the belief that everyone should know the law. Every man should know the law and be well disposed to use it. I don't believe that the framers ever intended for the people's legal affairs and legal issues and the outcome of these things to be left in the hands of a professional lawyering class with very little concern for justice, because most legal practitioners are not necessarily facilitators of legal justice. They're journeymen of legal practice, that's true, but not necessarily facilitators of legal justice.
And they're professional. They're professional. The lawyering class. My dad was a lawyer. He was in the class of 26, Michigan. Leopold and Loeb were in his class. But you have that. Would you say the same thing? How would you compare, like doctor, lawyer? Lawyer, that's a profession where you understand the law. and you understand its implications, how to practice it and its implications and all that. Then you have medicine. You have the same sort of thing with medicine, but in medicine there are people that go through the medical school. Other people go through the law school, that kind of thing. As a profession, you think law is not well served by the standards that the American Bar Association and the legal profession set for themselves, or what I'm trying to get at what you're getting at, and can you compare it to the medical profession, for instance?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a direct.
And how do you see those things?
There.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, here it is that the law is pretty much the weapon. The courtroom is the battlefield. That judge is the enemy, and that lawyer, for the most part, where the people's legal concerns are, as far as that is concerned, those lawyers are enemy spies. Those lawyers are intended, they're there, first of all, the person represented by a lawyer in the court. I practice pro se litigant. I'm a pro se litigant. So that means pro se is a term that means on one's own behalf.
Yes,
so one who represents themselves in the court.
Yeah.
So with that out of the way, the person who is represented by a lawyer in the court is defined in mainstream legal circles as a person of unsound mind, or almost as if a child, or someone who is incapable of thinking properly. Yeah,
doctors will feel the same way toward people often. They have an air of they know, you don't, just do what we tell you, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. In addition to that, the lawyer is an agent or operative of the state. He's an officer of the court first. Before he is your lawyer, he's an officer of the court. If there is a conflict between the interests of the state and the interests of the client, I should say the so-called state, because that the entity that is styled as the state government is not necessarily the state. That only the natural inhabitants, the human beings that inhabit the geographical area that comprises the territorial boundaries of this state, within the territorial boundaries of the state, can be considered the state.
Okay, collectively.
So when you're standing up as a defendant and your case is read, the people of the state of New York versus Joseph Carranza.
Yeah, pretty heavy duty,
it's not the people of the state of New York.
Right.
It's the state government which is styled as the state, but only the people of the state, the natural inhabitants of the state, can rightly be considered the state. We are the state.
Okay. There's a lot of thought goes into what you're saying. I think you've thought it through a lot, and we can follow it through. You go ahead, keep going. Yeah.
So now, the person represented by a lawyer, that the obligation is to the so-called state, not necessarily to the client. If there's a conflict between the interests of the client and the state, that lawyer has to weigh in on behalf of the state.
One of my heroes, being raised in a family where there were lawyers and a lot of discussion of the law and so forth, was Clarence Darrow. And he was famously known as Clarence Darrow for the defense. And he would defend, like, Mr. Scopes and so forth in the Scopes trial, and they would defend people against the intrusion. Or there's a whole lot of people, Michael Ratner and a lot of people at the Center for Constitutional Rights, Civil Liberties Union, a lot of people who dedicate themselves to trying to defend the rights of the citizen against the intrusions upon those rights by the state entities. Yeah, you follow what I'm saying there?
Yes.
And where does all that kind of thing, which is sort of the way we see things, fit into the way you're describing things? With the enemy being the state, is the way I heard. I thought you say,
Well, not that entity that styles itself as
or I heard
the
you
state.
say the judge did I hear you say the judge was the enemy?
Judge is the enemy.
You see that's the way you see it. You're seeing it adversarial, the citizens as adversarial to the system of which they're a political part of a polity, right?
Right.
Okay,
well,
that's okay.
Well, these...
Fair enough. A lot of people are seeing, increasing numbers are seeing things that way now.
Well, I think an increasingly large segment of the population is being touched by these systems that are in place, the encroachment of the police / corporate security state that we're being saddled with. What we're seeing in America now is the circumventing of the Constitution in favor of a species of justice that is alien and that is in contradistinction to the provisions of the Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And why is this happening? How is it possible that the legislators are passing laws requiring the immediate disarmament of all citizens and passing laws subjecting the people to random searches that were always considered repugnant to the to constitutional
Second Amendment, I
principles?
Think. Isn't it the Second Amendment?
That would be the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure.
Yeah, yeah. But there was one about housing or quartering or something. Was a second?
That's the Third Amendment.
It's the
about the quartering of troops in
even that's being questioned by some, although most people grant they understand the reasonableness of that. Yeah.
Another thing is we're seeing anti-parading and anti-assembly laws, like a law that was tossed around. I don't know if it was ever actually enacted into law. Certainly not duly enacted, which is another can of worms.
Yeah, you're opening huge cans of worms here, but it's okay. Good, go ahead, keep going. Yeah.
So, passing laws that that derogate or even abrogate the right of the people to peaceably assemble.
Yeah, there's another
anti-parading and anti-assembly.
You can't go in Central Park because you're going to hurt the grass, kind of thing. It happened with the Republican National Convention, I remember.
Right.
All kinds of rationales for abridging the rights of the people to assemble, which is supposedly part of the system we were living under in this so-called democracy, right?
So-called.
Yeah. Well, this democracy, I'll say the way they would say it, trippingly off the tongue, but the so-called, some people are saying, as the police state, and parts of what constitute a police state seem to be more and more intruding upon the situation as we talk now. Yeah.
It's difficult to fathom how a democracy could function when 90% of the wealth of the country is controlled by less than 1% of the population.
Well, okay.
When that 1% of the population has used that enormous wealth to gain power, to gain political power, to actually own anyone of any significance in the political power structure of the nation, when their agents and operatives occupy the highest levels of power and control in the pharmaceutical industry, the entire medical industry, the mainstream media, all of our major radio stations and television stations, all of the major print media. Basically, they own and control basically everything that we see and hear and think, with the exception of public access. Public access is that one diamond in the rough.
Thank you. I agree with that. I think there's really some truth to that. Yeah, and then there's some radio and other kinds of things and things like that. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure 1%, the 1% figure on the ownership and that. Greg Palast, I don't know if you're familiar with Greg Palast. He wrote a book, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy.
Yes,
because a lot of that use of the power is softer or something. It's not done directly through police or actions of arrest, and it's done through buying and controlling the institutions through economic coercion or economic co-option. Yeah.
Right. I think it was Arundhati Roy in one of her books. The title slips my mind at the moment. But she says, "What is this democracy when it's available it's up for bid to the highest bidder. It's up for sale to the highest bidder. So what kind of democracy is that?" And people like Michael Parenti are always lecturing about how democracy is always under attack by plutocracy. But even the term democracy, it's interesting, it's of significance to point out that the term democracy is not written in either the Constitution of the United States, nor is it written in any of the several state constitutions.
Is that right? Okay, I hadn't realized. I hadn't thought about it, but by God, I'm sure you're right. You've looked into it, yeah. Okay.
Right. And all but one state one of the most important founding principles, and that is that the people are the inherent holders of the political power.
Well, that's a big assumption in and of itself, because I don't think it's one. And I'm wondering if we could think about it historically. I think historically, if we go back through history, I don't think it's ever been anything other than a shifting thing where a small group will have the power to either require and coerce or co-opt the population, and the leader de jure, you could say, in the sense of the changes and so forth, has the ability, they have what they call power. Hannah Arendt has written on that, really, have the power to have the institutional control of the institutional structures that either coerce or co-opt the population to do what those that are in positions of power are the real leaders. And it's always been like that, it seems to me. Aristotle wrote about even 5th century Greece, or Periclean Greece, that you had some people leading the life of the mind and the spirit of political leadership or something. But it was a slave system, was based upon a slave system. The people were essentially slaves. Or on medieval estates, or the feudal period, 1,000 years after. And I don't think there was very much talk about real democracy in imperial Rome. You had an emperor, and you had to think there was some question of could the Senate hold on to some congressional Republican power or something, but you didn't have democracy or anything. And in the feudal period, you had the dynastic heads, kings, earls, and so forth, and the serfs were just like property on this feudal estate. Mm-hmm. The duke would lose his estate on in a crapshoot or something after drinking too much wine or whatever, and the serfs just went along with it. So what I'm trying to get at really is democracy, at least in the modern period as we think of history, was never characteristic of systems, and it's not characteristic of it now. So it's not a condition which is inherent to the way politically in the more modern era, say the last couple thousand years or more, democracy is not a given in terms of the way society has been organized out of history. One last little line I use too much. Joe Friendly tells me I say it too much. History is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. So and we don't have democracy now. Mm-hmm. There was chattel slavery. We now have economic slavery in a lot of real sense in the modern world. So we don't have democracy. So it's something that we've never had in a certain sense, and perhaps what you're saying ought to be the natural right and so forth. But do you understand, just to sort of get some of that into the discussion here, mm-hmm. the historical context of evolving power.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that was missing from all previous political systems, mm-hmm. Prior to the formation of what is known now as the United States, is that this idea that the people are the inherent holders of political power, because that was a departure from the ideas of the divine right of kings.
Yeah, that's right.
Or a society that lived under ecclesiastical law, where most of the people, of course, couldn't read or write. Mm-hmm. So only mm-hmm. Only certain people in the society had access to the law, and that set the stage for all types of mischief. So, that was an idea that was grown from the age of enlightenment, mm-hmm. the age of reason, that by enlightenment and reason and education that the people could come to govern themselves. Mm-hmm. So that was a very important concept, and that concept was embodied in the term that the people are the inherent holders of the political power.
Now, where is that language? The people are the inherent holders of political power. We use that in the political dialogue now, even,
That idea came from
Hume
the Enlightenment philosophers, Hume, John Locke, especially, Montesquieu, especially the structure of the government. Locke's 2 treatises on government, mm-hmm. Where the government is styled as a trust. Mm-hmm. That the people are both the trustors and the beneficiaries of the trust. And the people serving in the offices of the people serve in government are the people's political trustees. Uh-huh. The people's political trustees, we always hear modern-day politicians speaking about the inherent powers of the office. There's no inherent powers of the office. There are no legitimate inherent powers of the office.
Of which office? Any political office?
Any political office.
Okay,
there are only delegated powers.
Okay, from the people supposedly.
Right. So
that's the language. Yeah.
Right. The source of all the political power are the people themselves. Mm-hmm. Then the people...
Well, that's an assumption that is more in the breach than in the observation, it would seem to me. They can use that language, but it doesn't mean that it's characteristic of the reality. is what I was trying to, in a certain sense, say. It's an ideal.
This is what I refer to as the mythology of the American scheme of governance.
Thank you. Or the world government, because it's like that everywhere in the world. There's a small group.
Not necessarily so.
Where
Actually,
is there
the United
a real
States
democracy?
is unique in this respect. Because let's just take France, for instance.
Okay.
Where the individual gives up their freedoms for the benefit of the state, whereas under the American system, individual liberty, individual freedoms are sacrosanct. They are inviolable. Ostensibly.
Ostensibly. That's what I'm saying. Ostensibly, yeah. Okay, and you're saying that. But what you're talking, we do not live. Do you feel we live in a democracy?
Absolutely not.
We do not. Have we ever? Or has anyone ever lived in a democracy in a thing where, in the way that you would see democracy in an idealized kind of way?
I believe the same thing could be said of so-called communism. People say, well, that was a communist country, or this person is a communist, when in reality, communism is a theoretical political system where at the highest levels of communism, the state withers away.
Never achieved. It hasn't been achieved.
Right. These people who hold power tend not to give up that power. They tend not to just wither away, and then the society conducts its own affairs on its own behalf.
Let's just muse around a little bit. If everybody had power, let's just say, take an assumption, everybody had power over their own affairs and everything like that. If everybody had power, then there would be no power in the term that powers are usually used, which is the ability to require others to do what some think they should be made to do. There would be no power if everybody had power. In an idealistic or in a, it's like a dream world or something like that. Yeah.
Well, the determining factor there is everyone has the right to certain liberties, as long as those liberties don't infringe or encroach upon the liberties of others.
Yeah, right. Supposedly.
Right.
Do you think there's a distinction? There's two different things. Power, if we take a power. One is political power. That's a power to raise armies, tax, be able to require things. There's another thing called economic power. And the considering of these way of statecraft and the considering of organization of society, it used to be, I'm not sure if you're familiar, it used to be, it wasn't politics and economics, it was political economy. They were seen as one. They're linked as one. And in terms of, we're really thinking about, like you say, in terms of epistemology and so forth, there really are no distinctions in terms of reality. Everything is related to everything else, but we divide it down into disciplines in order to try and understand it and so forth. But is it possible to have a political arrangement and then have an economic arrangement which is different? If the people are not economically independent, can they ever be politically independent?
Well, these are the, I've heard this referred to in some of the reading that I've done as the four pillars of power.
Talk.
You have political power, economic power, military power, and the fourth one, ecclesiastical.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought. I saw the military power as being within the political, and certainly the ability to tax and set much of what the economic situation was going to be.
Well, for instance, in the United States, the political power is in civilian control, not in control of the military.
Okay, in most cases, yeah. In
some countries, they're one and the same.
Yeah, it came very close there at the time of McCarthy, and then when they were in Korea too, MacArthur wanted to. Yeah, okay. I'm just musing a little bit there.
But it's really interesting, now that
if I may, just one little sidebar. We'll get back to it. What's going on in Pakistan is interesting now, where Musharraf is now got the military. That's a stable institution in a society that's been almost feudal and that kind of stuff. And it's very worrying now to many people, including myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
I think,
yeah.
I believe
and we live in a global village, so we're all connected internationally in a way that perhaps we haven't been historically. That's part of a way of thinking also, But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, I think in terms of that that what's going on in Pakistan, that what we're witnessing there might be actually a dress rehearsal for what the rest of the world is in store for.
Okay.
And that brings me to a very interesting
by all
book
means.
that I've read recently. And the title of this book, I don't know if we can...
I think let me hold it, Joe. Okay. I'll hold this up. I think that's robotic. It might take a little while for it to come in, right? But give me a chance. And I can't see the monitor clear,
The True Story of the Bilderberg Group.
Okay.
This is by... the author's name is Daniel Estulin, Estulin. And if you go to the website www.bilderbergbook.com, you can read a brief summary by the author at the web page for this book.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good.
Have they been able to see it? Yeah, good. This is and this is on the internet. This is Amazon. You can get it out in the normal stores and so forth.
I believe the website for the publisher is Trinday. That's www.trinday either .org or .com.
Okay.
But it's the publisher is Trinday.
And you could Google it as the Bilderberg Group.
B-E-R-G, yes.
B-R-G, I'm sorry, yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, and, so we've shown them that. So talk to us about this.
This Bilderberg Group, I mean, if you spoke to maybe 90% of the people of the country, they've never heard of this group. And yet, this group and the operatives and agents of its subgroups and its interconnected network of like-minded organizations occupies the upper echelon of the power structure that we're saddled with.
Of the world?
It's an international power structure.
Yes, right, okay.
And we've heard of groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, although
go ahead.
Most of the people in the country have no idea what this group is about.
The Council, yeah.
And the other group, the Trilateral Commission.
Yeah.
Now, the Bilderberger Group is comprised of representatives either directly or indirectly of the world's wealthiest individuals and organizations.
Wealthiest, okay.
It was started by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands.
When?
I believe it was formed in the 1950s.
That recent. Okay, I didn't realize that.
An annual meeting, and the participants of this annual meeting, they meet in private. I won't say that they meet in secret or that it's a secret society because, of course, we know about it.
Yeah.
But I think that the Bilderberger Group, it's important to note that is not the highest level of power and control, that there are levels of power and control beyond that. There are truly societies that which remain unknown to us that perhaps determine the policies and pursuits and actions that this Bilderberger Group will bring into existence.
The power behind the crown of the Bilderberg Group that they wear. I mean,
right.
You're saying that. Now, are we able to get to those? And what are the sources of that power? And we live in a world of media, and we live in a world of, you got both power and influence, and you got the ability to inform public opinion, and all these kind of things. So power gets to be a little more splendid thing as you start thinking about it. But you're insinuating or saying you think there are powers larger than those that can be identified as representing, let's say, want of a better term, the world establishment. And it usually is seen like you said, the Trilateral Council and the Bilderberg, but
right.
You think there are societies or people that are more powerful than those associations. Okay.
Well,
but there might be not known, you seem to be saying, right?
Right.
Okay.
And people's initial reaction to all of this was, well, if the groups like this existed and they are what you say they are, how is it that we haven't heard about them in our free and independent press? And then we have to be reminded of the statement by John Swinton at 1953 at the National Press Club, where he's addressing his fellow journalists. John Swinton was the chief editor of the New York Times, I believe.
I didn't know.
Says, we are the servants of Mammon. They pull the strings and we dance. We are intellectual prostitutes. He says if one of us dared print our honest opinions in any of the publications that we work for, we'd be out on the street looking for a job the very next day.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the members of the Bilderberg Group, they do not appear in the media. They do not we will not see their names in print. They don't appear in the media because they own and control the media. And that's how we can pretty much measure the levels of control. If the person is a person whose name and whose photograph and whose activities are well publicized in the media, we know we know immediately by that fact alone that person is a low-level operative.
That's an amazing thing you're asserting there in that sense, you know, that would be the case. What you're talking about is the power structure that operates the planetary system, the worldly system, and that sort of thing, is not known to us. Who they are, they can't be identified. We have the Forbes 400, you know, the Forbes the most wealthy. We have the Davos Association that meets in Switzerland with so-called world leaders. We have the Chamber of Commerce. We have the political process, the presidents of the various countries. We have all the business organizations that recognize the largest, the Russell Index and all that sort of thing. We have systems that get at who the powers. We have the listing of the Times, we have all kinds of listings that focuses on that. A great deal of the attention of the world is on what they call the movers and the shakers. That's what they are interested in. How could it be that there wouldn't be some recognition if what you're asserting, there's a shadow group or something like that that's running things? How could that possibly survive? I mean, how could that possibly be that there wouldn't be attention given to them? There would be great interest in journalistic circles and others in those people just by virtue of the fact they're so important, and also the intellectual think tanks, universities, and so forth.
Yeah. Well, let's just say that we were amongst that group.
Yeah.
And the entire mainstream media, all of the major print and electronic broadcast media was in our pay and control. And let's say that we wanted to remain anonymous. Of course, we would be able to do so, no?
Well, because as you said before, if it was that secretive, yeah, okay. If it was that secretive, and if it was Swindon, I didn't know that name. I thought it was a poet. But anyway, but you know, I said that we're in the pocket of the, that we would be out of a job, and they control. It is true. It would seem. What is the basic source of that power of the group that you're talking about? Is it economic, basically? Is it political? We do recognize the heads of state, the prime ministers, that sort of thing. And is it is it a mix? Are they in a?
It is all pervasive, and it is omnipresent.
Okay, it sounds like a definition of God.
I've heard it. I've heard it said that its tentacles branch out into just about every aspect of control, of all of the what we spoke about before, the four pillars of power: military, political, ecclesiastical, and economic.
Okay.
Right? Now, of the Bilderberger Group, some members of the Bilderberger Group are also members of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. There's people who are members of one or more or all three of those.
Yeah, they published the
groups.
list of who they are. I mean, everybody knows that.
Right.
Everybody knew David Rockefeller was chairman of that, and they knew these names, and they would meet together. He would meet with the Bilderbergers, and they know who the people were meeting at those things. It seems to me it's open that you can get information about the Trilateral or the Council. And the Council on Foreign Relations, there's all kinds of very prominent people that are before the public all the time, are members of that. And it's sort of an honorific to be a member of that group of influential people that are accepted into the fraternity of learned scholarship and so forth. Yeah?
Almost without exception. Since 1928, every U.S. president has been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
There you go. So
not only the winner in each so-called presidential election, I say so-called because I don't believe that we live in a country where free and fair elections could be conducted. So I don't accept the legitimacy of the position.
Okay, that's very important, and we'll get back to that. The system that's in place is perhaps not legitimate in a historical context. Or a future-tending context of where we're going.
Well, when we talk about the president, or we talk about the government, in general terms, when we use these sweeping generalizations, these political officers, these senators, these congressmen, they are not what they seem to be in terms of the commonly understood linguistic interpretations of those terms.
Back to linguistics now, and semantics, right?
It's all about the words. The great books on that subject on your road
Chomsky,
on your road to linguistic literacy.
Yes, right.
The Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase.
Okay.
Language in Thought and Action by S.I. Hayakawa.
Okay.
Fallacy, The Counterfeit of Argument by Fernside and Holter.
Okay.
And Science and Sanity by Alfred Korzybski.
Okay, thank you. I'd say that's all books. They're on the record now, folks. You can do that. So, okay, good. Okay, go on. Go on. Yeah. Okay.
So now,
that's an interesting part of the canon of understanding this stuff.
So I think I believe that the only so-called president who was not a member of this group was LBJ. Since 1928, the winner of the so-called presidential election. And he made up for that by appointing an overwhelming number of Council on Foreign Relations people to the cabinet, to his cabinet, as each and every other one has done. And the power of this Bilderberg group, these constructs that we're speaking of and trying to grasp the enormity of, take the Watergate affair.
Yeah, I remember.
The Watergate affair, there's a chapter in the Bilderberg book about the Watergate affair and how he sets forth the idea, the author, Daniel Esterlin, that it was a fabrication.
I don't understand. Spell it out.
A fabrication basically in payback for Nixon's support for policies that were not in the interests of this group.
Of that group.
And I guess the same could be said of Kennedy, which is an interesting idea or set of ideas that I like to speak about when we address the subject of 9/11 on our public access stations. Because one of the most damning pieces of official culpability in the 9/11 attacks, I feel, is the Operation Northwoods, which was a plan set forth by the Joint Chiefs of Staff that involved the destruction or the staged or the mock destruction of aircraft, blaming it on Cuba to get the people of the country to support a war against Cuba. After this plan, of course, Kennedy rejected this plan. Then Kennedy started to take measures to deconstruct the CIA, which is a group that is essential to the advancement of the Bilderberg agenda.
Yeah.
And we all know how that turned out.
Well, the Bilderberg agenda, or the agenda of the ruling elite, there's a ruling elite on the planet, internationally and so forth, and they, or I was just trying to think, if you have people, and they would come out of, they tend to be at certain Harvard business school, law school, that they have universities that they meet with one another and do that. They're linked into the business community. They're also the political and the intellectual community in that. So it becomes like an intellectual elite. And if you're going to have, is there something wrong, let's say, with the power elite? Oh, that's a term that was used, I think, by C. Wright Mills. I'm not sure of that, but I think it was. But they have them. So it would make a sense that they have that they would have a meeting. They would have the meeting of their fellow members. A prime minister wants to meet with a prime minister. He doesn't want to meet with the shoemaker. Or there's somebody, you know what I'm saying? They have systems set up where there's certain power. There's a system where people are selected who's going to be the leader. So they would want to meet with themselves so that they can share, because they have a common understanding of things that the masses just don't have, Well, so it makes sense that they would get together among their own peers, is that if they are the world leaders or self-recognized by themselves perhaps as the world leader, and the whole process may be not one that is democratic or even historical legitimate. That's a large issue. But, I mean, it's understandable in practical terms they would want to get together with other fellow members of the ruling elites from around the various entities around the world. Business does the same. Scientists do the same, that kind of thing. They all meet birds of a feather, as it were.
Well, the difference between that and the scientific world is not so much that these people are so much more knowing or understanding or wise than the rest of the people that they exclude from the process of governance. Is that these people won't tolerate opposing. They won't tolerate, for instance, opposition candidates. You know, and that's why what most of the people in the country believe, the myth of the two diametrically opposed political parties, it does not in reality exist. They are in the pay and control of the same operatives.
Yeah, okay, and the pay and the control comes from deep-pocketed people in various parts of the economy or the society.
Even people that we believe to be these great anti-establishment leaders, like you mentioned Chomsky. Well, Chomsky.
He's a great scholar.
Okay. He may not be what most of the people in the country believe him to be. And if we get into it later, if we get a chance later, I'll flip to that section in the book and read you a little bit of information that's not commonly known about Mr. Chomsky. The same could be said of Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader is funded by the Rockefeller Institute, and I believe that John D. Rockefeller IV serves as a Nader advisor. So when I speak to you, when I spoke to you before about the pervasiveness of this group. And the influence that this group has, it extends to things that people don't commonly view as things that people commonly accept as being so-called anti-establishment. They are actually also in the pay and control of the very same establishment.
Yeah, it's just a way of co-opting. Co-opting opposition or something like that.
They're all co-opted. Anybody that is promoted, anybody that is even the people that are promoted on the so-called the so-called outsiders. When we take a look at the machinations that led to them being promoted as outsiders, it doesn't check out. The story doesn't check out.
If you look at something in the case of the evolving affairs of the society, you get to civil rights. You had Martin King, you had Malcolm X, you had people doing that. You had Sojourner Truth from the feminine side of things. You have these people that have tried to advance. You had Jesus, and you had some of the spiritual leaders who said, do to the least among you, and that sort of thing. You've had these kind of things that have been able to be either co-opted or not recognized. Is that all you're underlining, or is the book underlined that way?
Well, I had mentioned Chomsky before.
Well, okay, he's a dissident and somebody who's talking outside of the system, there's a thing called truth to power, that you could talk truth to power, and you should be able to do that, and that's one of the privileges that is supposedly part of a civilized order. But go ahead, you got something you want to read.
On page 59 of the True Story of the Bilderberg Group by Daniel Esterlin, which in the chapter that has to do with the Watergate affair that we mentioned before. I'll just read the excerpt from the book.
Okay.
That'll be better than...
Okay. All right.
By far, the most influential player in the Watergate crisis was Nixon's national security advisor, Henry Kissinger, a prominent Bilderberger, I might add. As far back as the mid-'60s, the Bilderbergers placed Kissinger in charge of a small group consisting of James Schlesinger, Alexander Haig, and Daniel Ellsberg. Working with them was the Institute of Policy Studies chief theoretician, Noam Chomsky. While the IPS, the Institute of Policy Studies, was the brainchild of the British Round Table, the Tavistock Institute determined its agenda, and together they developed programmed learning techniques.
Programmed learning, I don't know.
On that note, it's important to mention that the founder of CBS is a guy named
Mr.
William Paley.
Yeah.
And William Paley was a U.S. intelligence officer, and he was trained at the Tavistock Institute for Behavioral Analysis, which is another one of these organizations that is in this Bilderberg group, or under the control of this Bilderberg group. And he was trained in mass brainwashing techniques. Right? And one of the things that the Bilderbergs, the idea that they hold to is that they will be successful. Their agenda will come into existence because primarily they understand the inner workings of the human mind.
Well, they would. I would think that would be something they would want to take into account. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay.
And this ability to manipulate the thoughts and the minds of the masses, what Daniel Estelin refers to as the great unwashed, is essential to bringing their plan into existence.
What is their plan in your? I'm just trying to get at a certain. What is their plan? They would say we have a grand strategy for. And they would say to bring prosperity to people. We've built up great industries. We've increased look how much the standard of living. When my dad was born in 1900, the average age was 48. It's now 78. That's progress. There is progress. There is technology. There are things happening. There are a lot of electricians who have helped put together a lot of electrical systems that help bring comfort to people. And there's progress in terms up from the from the jungle, as it were, and everything like that. We're making progress. Somebody has to keep track of things in a responsible way and so forth. But we're making progress. Be patient. With time, we're improving all the time. We have a system that inherently inappropriate to the future, or what the future might herald, but we're building toward that future, and we have a system in place, and we're passing on responsibly the legacy of civilization, and we're doing it in a responsible way. The word would be responsible. We're being responsible to make sure the systems work and that sort of thing. That's the position they would probably take among themselves when they think about their brandy and cigars as they have discussions with all their responsible fellow members of the clubs of which they're a part, no? Okay.
Well, the Bilderbergers see themselves, first of all, the myth of perpetual growth. Right? The type of growth that
progress.
we've seen.
Auguste Comte talked about or the idea that things are progressing. There is that is getting better, in a sense.
Right. Well, this the Bilderbergers feel that this type of progression or growth is unsustainable.
Well, I'm not sure I could. Okay, go ahead. You're reading things into this thing
and they see themselves, in addition to seeing themselves as superior beings to virtually everyone else, essentially everyone else. They see themselves as the parent. Right? Now, Orwell wrote about the patriarchal society, right? Where the so-called state is the father, and father knows best.
You used to have a series on him now.
In all cases, father knows best. And
I think all systems have been patriarchic. I think
Now they
essentially
see that this system is unsustainable, and that their prospects for maintaining their level of comfort and their power and control are also unsustainable. And the key is energy, controlling the world's energy resources. That's what the war in Afghanistan was really about.
And in Iraq.
Notwithstanding the nonsense about protecting the rights of women that we had to suffer as the war was unfolding. And that's what the war in Iraq is about, notwithstanding all the nonsense about unmanned drones and weapons of mass destruction and all of the other malarkey that we had to suffer as that was developing and as it's unfolding. Because in addition to money, I mean, money is useless without the control of energy.
Okay.
Energy is a key element.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Yeah, right, yeah.
And they see themselves as the parent.
Loco parentis,
Right. Now, I don't believe, and I think it's important for me to express this idea, that I don't believe that any human being can be purely evil. A lot of people like to speak about this agenda to supplant all of the world's governments, the one world government plan.
Oh, you're getting to, that's one of the things you're saying, one world government.
Yeah. And we've already kind of seen it happen in Europe with the formation of the European Union. We've seen the loss of sovereignty.
Well, yeah, we've got 192 countries in the UN now. But it's sort of the technology is bringing it all together as a global village, like Marshall McLuhan said. I mean, a couple hundred years ago, they didn't know what was across the other side of the world. Now it's all interlinked, and the communications is coming, and the Internet, YouTube, and all that kind of stuff is coming. Linking it all together. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to see something like that happen in the United States. Actually, the United States is actually already dead.
You claim the United States is dead. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean.
It does not exist as the nation which most of the people living here believe that it is. The United States will soon cease to exist as the country that we know it to be currently. We will see a formation like the European Union is a model. We will see the merging of the United States with other nations.
Latin America, Canada
and Mexico. We're going to see first the North American Union, and we're going to see one currency and one government for all of those regions. And this is where the Trilateral Commission comes in. The Trilateral Commission, whereas the Council on Foreign Relations pretty much handles affairs within the United States. And a key component of that Council on Foreign Relations is the mass brainwashing and the control of all of the major systems of information distribution. Right?
Or the opinion leaders,
Right, because the people aren't supposed to know. It's very Straussian in its nature.
You think so? Yeah, okay.
That the people are not supposed to know the political and social and economic reality of their existence.
Well, they think that people don't know. The people are reading the gossip columns, and the people are looking at rock and roll and things like that. They just don't pay attention to the affairs of state and business and the major concerns.
Right.
They're not responsible at that level. Right. Is what their assumption is, I think, don't you? That's why they get together with people who do know, and they associate with their colleagues that can understand the nuances of geopolitical reality and realpolitik and everything.
Well, the people are not supposed to know.
Not supposed to, you think? Okay.
Right.
Perhaps. That's an assumption, and that there's a cabal, and it's an active thing to keep the people ignorant, is what you're assuming, or something like that.
Like the Trilateral Commission will consist of the North American or the Pan-American Union, right, which will probably consist of North and South American countries, the European Union, and the Pan-Asian, right, Trilateral Commission. Three
Japan, Europe, and the United
parts.
States.
So you have
that was the tri part.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like
Zbigniew-Brzezinski. Yeah.
Oh, right. Brzezinski, the Grand Chessboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
The global chessboard. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. But okay. Yeah. Right.
Very
and again, David Rockefeller and the people who founded it, and their leaders, and they're leaders. I've done a number of programs with people at the Trilateral Commission. They're very smart. They know a lot about what's going on and what the trends are and so forth. And I don't see them that way. As you seem to be saying it's like a conspiracy of oppressing the people by the leaders, and the leaders do not. And also the overall charge would be that they don't have sufficient vision toward a democracy or a liberating order for most people.
That is certainly not the plan.
Well,
the plan is the transformation.
Oh, you think it's a conscious thing. It's not a thing that historically evolves like a gestation thing. You see, you couldn't do a hell of a lot in terms of bringing the things you could bring now until we knew that there was such a thing as electricity. Or you wouldn't want to live in an age before anesthetic. Or we didn't understand the blood, or we didn't understand DNA. Now, there's progress being made in terms of our knowledge, and there's only so much that's able to be available at a certain time, and history is probably, in James Joyce's voice, brutish and short, or Hobbes or something. But it is getting better, and the technology and the systems are there to bring a liberating. But you need somebody at the helm, the leadership of the planet. And in this case, now it's the United States, the Trilateral Commission, and these people represent the leadership of the planet and so forth. And what you're doing is saying they don't have an adequate enough vision to disseminate things in an adequate way. I mean, that would be a critique of them that would make them subsumable by a vision that did have that.
What I'm saying is that they will shape global affairs in a way that is
benefits
exclusively to their benefit.
Yes, but
and to the great detriment of the world's peoples and their environment.
Is it necessary that that which is of benefit to the powerful must be at the disadvantage of those who are not powerful? Is it a zero sum? In a certain, there's language that we hear that it's zero sum. If there's only so many, if you got 20 people sitting around a table and there's only one hot dog, or let's say there's 200 and there's one hot dog, there's not very much there. If you have 200 hot dogs and 200 people, if there's enough there, if it's growing, the ability to provide for everybody, that's a different kind of context, and human nature could be a bit more malleable. But what I'm trying to get at, there's always been a power structure that keeps responsibility and that sort of thing. And you're saying it's not legitimate, or it's illegitimate, or it's something that should be challenged. And you're also involved with the 9/11 Truth thing. Do you think there was an involvement by the United States government in bringing down those those towers? That's an incredible. There's a lot of evidence, David Ray Griffiths and so forth, a lot of evidence that there may have been, like the Reichstag fire.
Again, the language that we use to frame these issues.
Yes, right.
The United States government. There's an awful lot of good, honest, decent, hardworking people. When we use the term United States government, there's many people who consider themselves to be at least part of the government. Who would never think to be involved in something like that. So it's not the United States government.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
It is
right.
A small group of operatives that, of course, determine at the highest levels of power and control the policies and actions and the reality that will be created by using the resources of the United States government.
Yeah.
Like the formation of the police state that is emerging in the United States.
Yeah, it is something to be concerned about, isn't it? We don't need no habeas corpus, or posse comitatus is being attacked now. Blackwater, they're hiring mercenaries from the military. There's all kinds of things going, and it's going very quickly. A lot of people are very concerned that they don't, and the people in the positions of responsibility for the institutions don't have a vision adequate to what the future requires. Well, I mean, I would agree with you completely on that.
It's adequate to their purposes of maintaining their position of privilege and their power and control, to solidifying and maintaining their level of comfort and their level of power and control.
As always has been.
There's too many people creating too many problems. So one element of the plan is to supplant, as we said, all of the world's governments, and to replace that with a one world government superstructure under the control of the UN, which this small group of operatives that we're speaking about will control. The transformation of the world into a police state, a return to feudalism.
Return to feudalism.
That will make us nostalgic for the most tyrannical kings and the most brutal regimes that have ever existed in the history of humanity.
A very sad note to end the program on, because we've run out of time, Joe. It's got to be the beginning of many conversations. And thank you for all the efforts you've been doing in the cause of justice. And thanks a lot for coming in. Sorry, we only just begun to scratch the surface, obviously.